The morning light streamed gently through the sheer curtains of Emma and Liam Carter's bedroom, illuminating the tranquil scene. The small house, tucked into a quiet suburban neighborhood, carried the cozy warmth of a home built with love. Emma stirred awake first, the early sun casting a golden glow on her soft features. Her heart was pounding, not with anxiety, but with the overwhelming anticipation of sharing life-altering news. For months, she and Liam had been on this journey together, yearning for the moment their family would grow. They had faced disappointments, long conversations over tea, and nights spent reassuring one another that the timing simply wasn't right yet. But today, everything had changed. Emma sat up in bed, clutching a small object in her hand. The pregnancy test, now a beacon of their dreams coming true, displayed the results she had prayed for. She bit her lip, containing a squeal of delight as she glanced at Liam. He was still asleep, his breathing steady, his arm flung protectively over her side of the bed. She reached out, brushing his tousled hair back gently, her smile growing as he began to stir. "Morning," Liam mumbled sleepily, his voice still gravelly as he opened his eyes to meet hers. "You're up early." "I couldn't wait," Emma said, her voice trembling with excitement. Her heart raced as she decided how to tell him. She held out the test, watching as his eyes adjusted to the object in her hand. Liam blinked, his brain catching up to the moment. His expression shifted from confusion to realization, and then to unrestrained joy. "You're?" he started, his voice breaking. "I'm pregnant," Emma confirmed, tears filling her eyes. In an instant, Liam was fully awake, pulling her into his arms and laughing with a mix of disbelief and happiness. "Emma, we're going to be parents," he exclaimed, his voice filled with awe. He cupped her face, his blue eyes shining as he kissed her forehead. "You've made me the happiest man alive." For the rest of the day, the couple floated in a state of pure bliss. They took a walk around the neighborhood, hands clasped, already dreaming aloud about their future child. Would it be a boy or a girl? Would they inherit Liam's sense of humor or Emma's love for art? The possibilities seemed endless, and every new thought only deepened their joy. As the weeks turned into months, their excitement never wavered. They poured their energy into creating the perfect nursery. A sunny room filled with soft pastels, a crib tucked in one corner, and whimsical animal prints adorning the walls. Liam spent evenings assembling furniture and teasing Emma about her insatiable cravings, while Emma busied herself knitting tiny socks and imagining the sound of baby laughter filling their home. Each night, as Emma's belly grew, Liam knelt beside her, pressing his ear to her bump. "Hey there, little one," he'd whisper, his voice filled with tenderness. "I can't wait to meet you. Your mom and I are already so in love with you." Emma would run her fingers through his hair, her heart swelling with gratitude for the man she had married. These were the moments she would treasure forever, the quiet, unspoken bond forming between the three of them. Their love felt invincible, a fortress against the world. As the day of their baby's arrival drew closer, they clung to each other even more tightly, savoring every moment of this magical chapter in their lives. Little did they know, their blissful beginning was only the calm before the storm. The day Emma went into labor was as ordinary as any other, or so it seemed. It was a crisp autumn morning, and the leaves outside their house danced in the gentle breeze. Emma had been folding baby clothes in the nursery, marveling at how tiny and perfect they were, when the first contraction hit. She froze, clutching her belly, her breath hitching as a sharp wave of pain rolled through her. "Liam!" she called, her voice trembling. Liam, who was in the garage organizing tools, dropped everything and rushed inside. "What's wrong? Is it time?" he asked, his face a mixture of panic and excitement. Emma nodded, gripping the edge of the changing table. "I think so. The contractions, they're close." Without hesitation, Liam sprang into action, grabbing the hospital bag they had packed weeks ago and helping Emma into the car. He held her hand tightly as he drove, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "It's going to be okay," he assured her, even as his own nerves bubbled under the surface. "Just keep breathing. We're almost there." The drive to Crestwood Hospital felt both endless and impossibly fast. By the time they arrived, Emma's contractions were coming with greater intensity, and nurses quickly wheeled her into the delivery room. Liam stayed by her side, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth and murmuring words of encouragement. "You're doing amazing," he said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "I'm right here, Emma. We've got this." Hours passed in a blur of pain, exhaustion, and determination. Emma gripped Liam's hand so tightly he thought she might break it, but he didn't dare let go. Then, just when they thought they were nearing the finish line, the doctor's expression shifted from calm professionalism to something more urgent. "Wait," the doctor said, glancing at the monitor. "There's more." Liam frowned, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean, more?" The doctor looked up, her tone both clinical and astonished. "It's not one baby, it's triplets." For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Liam stared at the doctor, then at Emma, who was too consumed by the effort of labor to process what was happening. "Triplets?" he repeated, the word landing like a thunderclap in the room. The next few minutes were a whirlwind. Nurses and doctors moved swiftly, preparing for the unexpected arrivals. One by one, the babies were born, tiny, perfect, and wailing with the vigor of new life. As the nurses cleaned them and placed them in Emma's arms, she looked down at her children with a sense of wonder that eclipsed her exhaustion. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "They're beautiful. They're ours." Liam, however, stood frozen at her side. His gaze shifted from the babies to Emma, his expression darkening. Each child had a head of soft, curly hair and skin several shades darker than either Emma's or his own. His initial joy gave way to confusion, and then something colder. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low and sharp. Emma looked up at him, her joy dimming. "Liam, what do you mean? They're our babies." He shook his head, stepping back as if the sight of them burned him. "No," he said, his tone rising. This doesn't make sense. Look at them, Emma. Look at their skin. How is this possible?" Emma's heart sank. "Liam, they're your children. They're ours," she insisted, her voice breaking. "Please, don't do this." But Liam was already pulling away, his mind racing with doubts and accusations. His hands clenched into fists at his sides as he stared at the 3 tiny lives that had just entered the world. "No," he said again, his voice colder now. "They're not mine." Emma felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. The pain of labor was nothing compared to the ache spreading through her chest. She reached out to him, but he recoiled, his expression hard and unyielding. "I need answers," Liam said, his voice cutting through the fragile silence. "But until I get them, I can't." He stopped, shaking his head as if trying to wake from a nightmare. Without another word, he turned and left the room, the door clicking shut behind him. Emma was left alone with her 3 newborns, the joy of their arrival overshadowed by the storm of Liam's reaction. Tears streamed down her face as she cradled her children, her mind reeling with questions she couldn't answer. What had just happened? And how would she face the future now with her family fractured before it had even begun? The hospital room, once filled with anticipation and joy, felt like a cavern of silence after Liam's departure. Emma sat on the bed, her body weak from labor, but her heart weighed down even more heavily by his words. The triplets, swaddled in soft blankets, slept soundly in her arms, their tiny faces untroubled by the storm brewing around them. Emma stroked the downy hair on her babies' heads, her mind racing. Liam's accusations replayed in her thoughts, each word sharper than the last. How could he doubt me? How could he doubt us? She had spent years loving this man, building a life with him, and now, in the moment she needed him most, he had walked away. By the time the nurses came to check on her, Emma's tears had dried, replaced by a steely determination to stay strong, for her children, if not for herself. "Mrs. Carter," one nurse said softly, adjusting the IV line in Emma's arm. "Do you have someone you can call? A family member, perhaps?" Emma hesitated. Her parents had passed years ago, and Liam had been her rock, her partner through life's challenges. The realization that she was truly alone in this moment hit her like a tidal wave. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's just me now." Later that day, as Emma sat in the quiet of her room, the door burst open. She looked up, hope briefly flickering in her eyes, thinking Liam had returned. Instead, it was him, but his expression was colder than before. "I've spoken with the doctor," Liam said flatly, his arms crossed. "They're healthy, but that doesn't change the fact that they're not mine." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Liam, please, listen to me. They are yours. I would never." He cut her off with a wave of his hand. "Don't," he snapped. "Don't stand there and lie to me. Look at them, Emma. Look at their skin. How do you explain that?" Emma shook her head, her voice breaking, as she replied, I don't know, Liam. I don't know why they look this way, but it doesn't mean they're not yours. We've been through so much together. How can you think I would betray you? Liam's jaw tightened, his eyes hard with anger and hurt. I can't do this, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I won't raise children that aren't mine. Emma's heart shattered. Liam, don't do this, she pleaded, her hands trembling. These babies need you. I need you. We're a family. Not anymore, he interrupted coldly. He turned toward the door, his shoulders rigid. Take your kids and get out of my house. Emma stared after him, the finality of his words sinking in like a dagger. She wanted to scream, to fight, to make him see reason, but the exhaustion from labor and the sheer weight of his betrayal left her unable to do anything but cry silently as the door slammed shut behind him. By the time Emma was discharged, she knew she couldn't go back to the home they had built together. The thought of walking through the door and facing Liam's accusations again was unbearable. Instead, she cradled her newborns tightly and walked out of the hospital into the brisk autumn air, her mind racing for a plan. The only person she could think to call was Laura, an old friend from her college days. They hadn't spoken in years, but Emma prayed Laura would still care enough to help. Her hands shook as she dialed the number, balancing the phone against her shoulder while holding one of the babies in her arms. Hello? Laura's familiar voice answered after a few rings. Laura, it's Emma, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I need your help. The pause on the other end felt like an eternity before Laura responded. Emma? What's wrong? Are you okay? Emma's composure cracked, and the tears she had been holding back all day finally spilled over. No, she choked out. I have nowhere else to go. Laura didn't hesitate. Tell me where you are. I'm coming to get you. An hour later, Laura arrived, her arms wide open and her face full of concern. She helped Emma into her car, taking the babies one by one and securing them in borrowed car seats. You're safe now, Laura assured her, squeezing her hand as they drove toward Laura's modest home in Brookfield. Emma stared out the window, clutching her children close. The pain of Liam's rejection still cut deep, but she promised herself one thing. No matter how hard things got, she would protect her babies with everything she had. As they pulled up to Laura's house, Emma took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. This wasn't the life she had planned, but it was the one she had now. And she would face it, one step at a time. Laura's house was small but welcoming, a modest two-bedroom home tucked away on a quiet street in Brookfield. The exterior showed signs of wear, but the warmth inside was undeniable. The walls were lined with photos of family and friends, the furniture mismatched yet comfortable, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. It was far from the life Emma had envisioned for her children. But at that moment, it felt like a sanctuary. Come in, Laura said softly, holding the door open as Emma stepped inside with the triplets. You can stay as long as you need. We'll figure this out together. Emma nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She followed Laura into the small living room, sinking onto the worn sofa with a sigh of exhaustion. Laura sat beside her, her eyes scanning Emma's face. You look like you haven't slept in days. Let me take the babies for a bit so you can rest. No, Emma said quickly, clutching her newborns protectively. She softened her tone, glancing down at the tiny faces nestled in her arms. I'm afraid to let go of them. Laura nodded in understanding. Okay, but at least let me make you something to eat. You need your strength. She disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Emma alone with her thoughts. The triplets stirred, their soft whimpers pulling Emma out of her daze. She gazed at them, marveling at their delicate features, their tiny hands, their button noses, the peaceful expressions on their faces. Each of them had a unique personality already. Maya, the smallest, had a quiet strength. Caleb, the largest, was already showing signs of being a leader. And Noah, nestled in the middle, had a calm presence that seemed to soothe his siblings. They were her entire world now, and she would do whatever it took to keep them safe. Laura returned with a plate of toast and a cup of tea, placing them on the coffee table. Eat, she insisted gently. You can't pour from an empty cup, Emma. Emma forced herself to take a few bites, the simple act of eating reminding her that she was still human, still capable of moving forward. She glanced at Laura, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Laura waved her hand dismissively. "You do the same for me. Now, tell me everything. What happened?" Emma hesitated, the pain of Liam's betrayal still raw. But as she recounted the events of the past few days, the words tumbled out, each one laced with disbelief and heartbreak. By the time she finished, Laura's face was a mix of anger and sympathy. "That man," Laura said, shaking her head. "He doesn't deserve you, Emma. Or those beautiful babies. You're better off without him." Emma nodded, though the words felt hollow. She wasn't ready to process the full weight of Liam's absence yet. Instead, she focused on the immediate challenges, finding a way to provide for her children, rebuilding her life from scratch. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of adjustments. Laura helped Emma find a part-time job cleaning houses during the day, and at night, Emma took shifts at a local diner. The work was grueling and the hours long, but Emma pushed through, fueled by her love for her children and her determination to give them a better life. Laura, true to her word, became an indispensable support system. She babysat the triplets while Emma worked, her home ringing with the sound of their laughter and cries. Slowly but surely, Emma began to carve out a semblance of stability. She moved into a small apartment above the diner, a far cry from the spacious home she had shared with Liam. But it was hers. It was a fresh start. The triplets thrived despite the hardships. Maya's quiet strength blossomed into curiosity, her big eyes constantly taking in the world around her. Caleb, always full of energy, brought joy to everyone with his infectious giggles. And Noah, ever calm and steady, had a way of bringing peace to even the most chaotic moments. Their laughter filled the tiny apartment, transforming it into a place of love and resilience. One evening, after putting the babies to bed, Emma stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. The weight of the past still lingered, but as she watched her children sleep, she felt a flicker of hope. They were her reason to keep going, her reason to fight. The future was uncertain, but Emma knew one thing for sure. She would rise from the ashes of her old life, stronger than ever. For her children, she would build a new world, one filled with love, stability, and the promise of better days ahead. Time passed, and Emma settled into a new rhythm, balancing the demands of work with the joys and challenges of raising her triplets. Life in the small apartment was far from easy, but it was filled with love. Maya, Caleb, and Noah grew quickly, their personalities blossoming with each passing day. Maya, with her keen curiosity, was often found crawling after anything that caught her attention, her tiny hands reaching for the world around her. Caleb was the adventurous one, always ready to climb or explore, his laugh echoing through the apartment like a song. Noah, calm and observant, seemed wise beyond his years, even as a toddler, often sitting quietly, watching his siblings with a thoughtful gaze. Despite the happiness her children brought, Emma couldn't completely escape the whispers of her past. Liam's accusations and abandonment lingered in her mind, especially on sleepless nights when the apartment was quiet. And then there was the question that haunted her. Why did her children look the way they did? Emma never doubted that Liam was their father, but the mystery of their appearance nagged at her, a puzzle she couldn't solve. One chilly autumn afternoon, as Emma prepared dinner, a knock sounded at her door. She wiped her hands on her apron and opened it to find a delivery man holding a small, unmarked envelope. "For Emma Carter," he said, handing it over before disappearing down the hallway. Emma stared at the envelope, her heart pounding. The handwriting on the front was unfamiliar, neat but hurried, as though the sender had been in a rush. She closed the door and sat down at the kitchen table, her hands trembling as she opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper and an old photograph. The photograph showed two men standing side by side in what appeared to be a sepia-toned snapshot from decades ago. One of the men was clearly Liam's great-grandfather. Emma recognized his sharp features and confident stance from the family portraits that had adorned the walls of their old home. The other man, however, was a mystery. His complexion was darker, his eyes strikingly similar to Caleb's, and his expression carried a quiet strength. The resemblance between him and Emma's children was uncanny. Emma unfolded the letter. It was brief, written in the same hurried script as the envelope. "Family secrets run deep. The truth lies in the past. Start with Crestwood Archives." No signature. No explanation. just a cryptic message that left Emma with more questions than answers. She spent the evening staring at the photograph, her mind racing. Who was the man in the picture? And what did he have to do with her children? She felt a surge of determination. If there was a piece of her family's history that could explain everything, she would find it. The next day, Emma arranged for Laura to watch the triplets and headed to Crestwood Archives, a dusty, dimly lit building tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The smell of old paper and leather greeted her as she stepped inside, the air thick with history. "Can I help you?" asked a kind-faced librarian, peering at Emma over a pair of thick glasses. "Yes," Emma replied, holding up the photograph. "I'm looking for information about these men. This one is Liam Carter's great-grandfather, but I don't know who the other man is. I was told I might find answers here." The librarian studied the photograph for a moment before nodding. "Follow me," she said, leading Emma to a section of the archives labeled Local Families and Estates. Emma spent hours poring over old documents, photographs, and journals. The more she uncovered, the clearer the picture became. Liam's great-grandfather, Edward Carter, had been a prominent businessman in the early 1900s, known for his ruthless ambition and sharp mind. The other man in the photograph, as it turned out, was a farmhand named Samuel, who had worked on the Carter estate for years. But the records hinted at something more, a connection deeper than employer and employee. Letters between Edward and Samuel revealed a bond that went beyond friendship, though the details were vague. Samuel had eventually left the Carter estate under mysterious circumstances, and there was no further mention of him in the family records. Emma's heart raced as she read the final letter from Samuel to Edward. "Our blood may flow from different veins, but our legacy is shared. One day, the truth will surface, and the world will see what we both tried to hide." Was this the answer she had been searching for? Could it explain her children's appearance and the connection to Liam's family? The pieces were falling into place, but the picture was far from complete. Emma left the archives with a heavy heart, the photograph and letters tucked safely in her bag. She knew she was on the brink of uncovering a truth that could change everything. But she also knew that truth came with risks. Would Liam even care? Would it make a difference to the man who had already walked away? As Emma walked back to her apartment, her thoughts turned to her children. They deserved to know where they came from, to understand their heritage and the strength that ran through their veins. No matter how painful the truth might be, she would uncover it for them. And deep down, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The upscale neighborhood of Ashton Heights, once a symbol of Liam's success, now felt more like a gilded cage. The sprawling mansion he had purchased with pride echoed with emptiness, and the silence weighed heavily on him. His second wife, Vanessa, filled the house with designer furniture and extravagant decor, but no amount of luxury could mask the cracks in their marriage. Vanessa was demanding and controlling, a stark contrast to Emma's warmth and kindness. She had married Liam for his wealth and status, and Liam, desperate to move on after Emma's departure, had clung to the illusion of a perfect life. But as the years passed, that illusion crumbled. Arguments became routine, and Liam found himself retreating into his work to avoid the tension at home. Yet, no matter how hard he tried to bury himself in corporate deals and late-night meetings, Liam couldn't escape the memories of Emma and the children he had turned away. They haunted him in quiet moments, their faces appearing in dreams that left him restless. The image of Caleb's wide, innocent eyes, so strikingly familiar yet inexplicably different, was seared into his mind. One evening, after yet another heated argument with Vanessa, Liam found himself sitting alone in his study. A half-empty glass of whiskey sat on the desk beside him, the amber liquid catching the soft glow of the lamp. His gaze wandered to a drawer he hadn't opened in years. With a sigh, he pulled it open and retrieved a small, leather-bound album. The album contained photographs from his life with Emma, snapshots of their vacations, their first home, and candid moments filled with laughter. At the back of the album was a sonogram image, the only tangible memory of the family they had planned to build together. Liam's chest tightened as he traced a finger over the grainy outline of the unborn child he had abandoned. "What have I done?" he whispered, his voice breaking. The guilt that had simmered beneath the surface for years finally erupted, consuming him. He had convinced himself that Emma's betrayal was unforgivable, but deep down, he had always known the truth. He had acted out of fear and pride, not reason. The guilt grew unbearable in the following days. Liam's work began to suffer, his focus faltering during important meetings. His colleagues noticed his distracted demeanor, and whispers of concern spread through the office. At home, Vanessa's sharp remarks only deepened his despair. One night, unable to sleep, Liam wandered into the living room and found himself standing before a portrait of his family lineage. It was a grand painting that depicted his ancestors, including his great-grandfather, Edward Carter. The resemblance between Edward and Caleb's features struck him like a bolt of lightning. For the first time, Liam began to question everything he had believed. Could there have been a hidden truth in his family's history? Was it possible that the triplets' appearance wasn't a betrayal, but rather a reflection of something long buried? The idea gnawed at him, and Liam knew he couldn't ignore it any longer. Determined to seek answers, Liam decided to start with his mother, Evelyn. Though their relationship had been strained in recent years, he knew she held the key to the Carter family's secrets. Evelyn had always been a pillar of strength in the family, fiercely protective of their legacy. If anyone knew the truth, it was her. When Liam arrived at Evelyn's estate, he was greeted by the familiar sight of the grand house he had grown up in. The pristine gardens and imposing architecture were as intimidating as ever, but Liam pushed past his hesitation and stepped inside. Evelyn sat in the sunroom, sipping tea and flipping through an old photo album. She looked up as Liam entered, her sharp eyes narrowing. "Liam," she said, her tone cool. "What brings you here at this hour?" "I need to talk to you, Mother," Liam said, his voice firm. He sat across from her, his gaze unwavering. "About our family, about the past." Evelyn's expression didn't change, but Liam noticed a flicker of something, unease in her eyes. "What about the past?" Liam took a deep breath, pulling out the photograph Emma had shown him years ago. "This man," he said, pointing to Samuel. "Who is he? And why does he look like my children?" Evelyn froze, her hands tightening around the photo album. For a moment, she said nothing, her face a mask of composure. Then she sighed and set the album aside. "There are some truths, Liam," she said slowly, "that are best left buried." "Not this one," Liam insisted, leaning forward. "I need to know, Mother. I need to understand what I've done, and if I was wrong." Evelyn studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Very well," she said. "But understand this, the truth may not bring you the solace you seek." She began to recount the story of Edward and Samuel, their complicated relationship, and the secrets they had carried to their graves. As Evelyn spoke, Liam felt a mix of anger, regret, and determination. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and with them came the realization of how deeply he had failed Emma and his children. When Evelyn finished, Liam sat back, his mind reeling. "I have to make this right," he said finally, his voice resolute. Evelyn's gaze softened, and for the first time in years, she reached out to her son, placing a hand on his. "Then do it," she said. "But understand, redemption isn't given, it's earned." Liam left his mother's estate with a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be difficult, but he was ready to face the consequences of his actions and fight for the family he had cast aside. The autumn evening air was crisp as Emma made her way to the community center in the heart of Brookfield. She had been invited to a local event, a fundraiser for the Children's Library, something that, as a single mother, she felt strongly about supporting. It was a chance for her to meet other parents, mingle in the community, and show her children how much she cared about their education. Her mind, however, was not entirely focused on the event. Despite everything she had gone through, there were moments when her thoughts wandered to Liam. She hadn't seen him in years, but his face, his voice, and the way he had once held her still haunted her. The questions surrounding the triplets' appearance, the mysterious letter she had found, and the truth of their bloodline, all of it tugged at her. Would Liam ever know the truth? Would he even care? As Emma walked into the crowded hall, her eyes scanned the room, taking in the faces of people she recognized. The event was lively, with laughter and chatter filling the space. Tables were laden with books and donated items for auction. Music played softly in the background, and children ran around excitedly, their laughter ringing through the room. She didn't expect to see him here. But then, Through the crowd, she caught a glimpse of him. Liam. He was standing by the refreshments table, looking uncomfortable in his well-tailored suit. His eyes scanned the room, but when they landed on Emma, everything around them seemed to fade into the background. It was as if time itself had slowed, allowing them both to process the moment. For a long second, neither of them moved. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't seen him like this in years. No longer the confident, poised man she had once known, but someone who seemed burdened, worn down by something deep within. His eyes, once filled with self-assurance, now held a hint of regret. His posture was stiff, a far cry from the tender way he had once cradled her in his arms. Liam, on the other hand, was struck by how much Emma had changed, and yet how much she had stayed the same. Her beauty was no longer the youthful glow of a woman he had once taken for granted, but something more profound. She carried herself with a strength he had never fully recognized until now. And there, standing in front of him, were 3 young children, their laughter as light as the day they were born, and Liam's heart twisted painfully. They were his children. He was sure of it now. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the years between them pressed down like a heavy stone. But then, Emma's voice broke the silence, her words soft yet laced with an edge he wasn't prepared for. "What are you doing here, Liam?" Her tone was cautious, guarded, as if she feared what he might say or do. Liam took a step forward, his gaze never leaving her face. I didn't expect to see you here, either." He paused, unsure of how to continue. He had rehearsed this moment countless times in his mind, but now that it was real, words seemed to fail him. Emma crossed her arms over her chest, an act of self-protection more than anything. "You haven't been part of our lives for years, Liam," she said, her voice steady, but there was a fire behind her eyes. "What could possibly bring you to this event?" Liam hesitated. He didn't want to say the wrong thing, but the need to make things right, to explain himself, pushed him forward. I've been thinking about everything. About you, about the kids. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I need you to know that I regret leaving. I regret walking away." Emma felt a sharp pang in her chest at his words, a tangle of emotions swarming inside her. Regret. It was what she had always hoped to hear, but hearing it now didn't bring the peace she imagined. Instead, it only reminded her of the pain she had endured, of the nights she had cried alone, of the moments when she had wondered if she would ever feel whole again. "You regret it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if the words themselves were too painful to say aloud. "Do you have any idea what that did to me, Liam? To our children?" Liam's face twisted in anguish. I know I hurt you, Emma, and I hurt them too. I see that now, but I didn't know what I was doing then. I was scared, and I was angry, and I let my pride get in the way of everything that mattered." For a moment, Emma stood in silence, her arms still crossed, her gaze focused on the floor. It felt like 1,000 years had passed since she had heard his voice, and yet hearing him now only reminded her of the betrayal that still stung. "You made your choice, Liam," she finally said, her voice firm. "And I've had to live with the consequences of that choice. My children have had to live with it too. I've spent every day building a life for them without you, without your help, and I've done it alone." Her words hit Liam like a physical blow. He closed his eyes for a moment, ashamed of himself. He had been so blinded by his own pain, by the lies he had told himself, that he hadn't considered the weight of the life Emma had carried all these years, the life he had left behind. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Emma," he said quietly, "but I need to try. For the kids. For you. I know I can never make up for the past, but I want to be part of their lives now. If you'll let me." Emma met his gaze, her eyes hard, but there was something softer beneath the surface. A flicker of something she didn't want to admit, something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. "I don't know, Liam," she said, her voice shaking with the weight of her own unresolved emotions. "I don't know if I can trust you again. Not after everything." Just then, Caleb, who had been playing nearby, ran up to Emma, tugging on her sleeve. "Mom, look, there's a man over there who looks just like you and me." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She looked down at Caleb, her breath catching in her throat. And then, as if the universe itself was pushing the issue forward, Liam followed Caleb's gaze. And there, standing across the room, was a man who shared an uncanny resemblance to Caleb. A man who looked so much like him, it was as though they were mirror images of each other. Liam's pulse quickened. He had been avoiding the truth for so long, but in that moment, it felt undeniable. The answer to the questions that had haunted him for years was standing right in front of him. He turned back to Emma, his voice trembling. Is he? Emma nodded slowly, her eyes locked on Caleb. Yes. He's yours, Liam. Liam stood there, stunned, his heart pounding in his chest. The revelation hit him like a tidal wave, sweeping away any remaining doubt. This was real. This was his family, and he had missed it. In that moment, Emma knew the path forward wouldn't be easy. Trust, once shattered, wasn't easily repaired. But for the first time in years, she felt something stir inside her, something that had been buried under years of pain. Hope. The room seemed to shrink around Emma as the weight of the moment settled heavily in her chest. Liam's voice, trembling with emotion, echoed in her ears as he stood there, his gaze locked onto Caleb. The truth had been laid bare, one that Emma had known for years, but that Liam was just beginning to accept. Caleb, with his dark skin and striking features, was undeniably his child. There was no denying it now. For a brief moment, Emma felt the pang of both relief and sadness. Relief that the truth had been acknowledged, but sadness because it had taken so long, because Liam had let all those years slip away, moments with his children he could never get back. Liam was still processing, his mind racing. His eyes flicked from Caleb to Emma, then back to the boy who had been kept from him all these years. His heart ached as he took in the resemblance, the way Caleb's smile mirrored his own, the way the boy's dark eyes seemed to reflect a depth of emotions he had yet to understand. Emma could see the turmoil in his eyes, but she also felt a coldness creeping back inside her, a barrier that she had worked so hard to build and protect. You don't get to walk back in like this, Liam, she said, her voice firm, but tinged with the exhaustion of the years she had spent alone. Liam's face faltered. He reached out, his voice desperate. Emma, please, I know I messed up. I know I can't take it all back. But I've spent so long thinking about what I could have done differently, about the children I abandoned. I want to be part of their lives. I want to be their father. The words felt hollow coming from him. They weren't a simple apology. They were a plea. He wasn't asking for forgiveness, but for a second chance, something Emma didn't know she could give. Not yet. Not after everything. I'm not asking for you to forgive me, Emma, Liam continued, his voice softer now. I'm not even asking you to let me back in right away. But please, let me be a part of their lives. I owe them that much, and I owe you that much too. Emma's thoughts were a whirlwind. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him that he had no right to show up now, after all this time, after everything he had put her through. But she didn't. Instead, she took a deep breath, her arms still crossed over her chest, and slowly let the words escape her lips. You didn't just hurt me, Liam. You hurt them. You broke their world when you walked away. They've had to grow up without a father, without you. I don't know if I can let that go. I don't know if I can trust you. Her voice cracked at the last part, betraying the depth of her pain. She had spent so long being the strong one, holding everything together, but the cracks were starting to show. She had spent years building a life for her children, one where Liam didn't exist. But now, in the face of his regret, his plea, she wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Liam stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. I don't expect you to trust me overnight, he said, his voice low, almost pleading. I don't deserve your trust, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove I can be a father to them. I'll start small. I'll be there for them, show them that I'm here, and hopefully, one day, you'll see that I'm not the same person I was. Emma's heart wavered. Her instincts told her to walk away, to shield herself and her children from the man who had once broken her heart. But another part of her, the part that still wanted to believe in redemption, in second chances, felt the weight of his sincerity. There was a part of her that wanted to believe that he could change, that he could be the man he had once promised to be. Before she could respond, the door to the community center opened, and a familiar voice interrupted the moment. Vanessa. Emma stiffened as the woman entered, her eyes quickly scanning the room. Her gaze landed on Liam and Emma, and she froze, her expression a mixture of confusion and anger. Liam, what are you doing here? she asked, her voice sharp. Liam looked at Vanessa, guilt flooding his chest. I'm talking to Emma, he said, his tone apologetic. Vanessa's eyes flicked between the two of them, her lips curling into a tight smile. Well, I don't see why you should waste your time on her. She's moved on. She has no need for you now. Emma's stomach turned as Vanessa's words cut through the air. The audacity of the woman to show up now to try to stake some claim on Liam's attention made Emma's blood boil. She had always known that Vanessa was not a woman to be trifled with, but seeing her standing there, bold, dismissive, as though Emma meant nothing, made something inside her snap. Excuse me, Emma said, stepping forward, her voice icy. I don't know who you think you are, but this is none of your business. Liam and I have history, whether you like it or not, and now he's trying to make up for the mess he left behind. So if you're just here to make a scene, maybe you should leave. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, her jaw tightening. You think this is just about the past? She snapped. Liam is my husband now. If you think for 1 second that I'm going to let you interfere with that, you're wrong. The tension in the room thickened as Liam stood between the two women. He opened his mouth to speak, but Vanessa cut him off, her voice dripping with venom. No, Liam, you don't get to keep running back to her every time things get tough. You made your choice years ago. Liam's heart pounded as he glanced at Emma, who stood there, her arms crossed, her face a mask of resolve. The words she had spoken earlier rang in his ears. He had hurt her. He had chosen this life, this woman, and now he was trying to undo it. But no matter how much he wanted to be there for Emma and the kids, there was no simple fix for the damage he had done. I'm sorry, Vanessa, Liam said quietly, his voice steady. I can't keep pretending this doesn't matter. I need to face what I did, and I need to make things right with Emma and the kids. That's where I need to be. Vanessa's face twisted in anger, and for a moment, Emma thought the tension would snap. But instead, Vanessa turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed felt like a breath held too long, and Emma exhaled deeply, her shoulders slumping. She looked at Liam, who seemed lost in thought, his face a mixture of regret and resolve. What now? Emma asked, her voice softer this time, though still guarded. Liam's expression softened, and he looked at her with a sincerity that was almost painful to witness. Now, we take it one step at a time. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Emma. I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be the father I should have been from the start. Emma nodded slowly, her heart torn in two. She wasn't ready to forgive him yet, but she knew that the path forward wouldn't be simple. There was still so much to work through, so much damage to heal. But for the first time in years, she allowed herself to consider the possibility of a future, one where her family could heal, and Liam could be a part of it again. It was a cold morning when Evelyn, Liam's estranged mother, knocked on Emma's door. The sound was hesitant, almost as though she wasn't sure what she was doing there. Emma, having just woken up, was unprepared for the surprise visitor. But something about the energy outside her door stirred a knot of unease in her stomach. She hadn't heard from Evelyn in years. Not since the day Liam and Emma had separated. Evelyn had always been the quiet presence in their lives, standing on the outskirts of their relationship, watching, but never intervening. Emma had always known there was something about Evelyn that didn't sit well with her, but after years of neglect from Liam and his family, she had learned to shut that voice out. After all, Liam's parents had never been involved with the triplets, never once reaching out, never offering help or support when Emma was struggling. So, when Emma opened the door to find Evelyn standing there, her expression serious, Emma's heart did a little skip. She didn't know whether to feel anger, curiosity, or fear. "Hello, Emma," Evelyn greeted, her voice soft, almost apologetic. Emma's brow furrowed. "What do you want, Evelyn?" Her tone was blunt, but she couldn't help the bitterness that slipped into her words. After all these years, why now? Why after everything had happened? Evelyn looked down, her hands wringing nervously as though unsure of how to proceed. "I need to talk to you. It's about the children, about what you've been through, and about what I've kept hidden." A chill ran down Emma's spine, a sense of dread creeping up her back. Evelyn's words hung in the air, unfinished, yet heavy with unspoken truths. Emma stepped back, allowing the older woman to enter, and silently led her to the small living room, her heart beating faster with each step. "I owe you an apology," Evelyn began once they were seated. "I should have told you this years ago. But I didn't want to stir up trouble. I didn't want to tear apart the little family you and Liam were trying to build." Emma's gaze hardened. "What are you talking about?" Evelyn swallowed hard, a pained expression flickering across her face. "I know the truth about the children. I know about Caleb, Maya, and Noah." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Emma's breath caught in her throat as the truth Evelyn was about to reveal slowly unfurled. The possibility that Evelyn knew something about her children's parentage, something she had kept hidden, struck Emma with an unsettling mixture of disbelief and anger. How could Evelyn have known all this time and said nothing? Evelyn's voice was low, almost a whisper, as though she was afraid someone might overhear the truth she was about to share. "Caleb, he's not just Liam's son. He's part of something much bigger than that. A family secret, one that has been hidden for generations." Emma's mind reeled. Her eyes narrowed, refusing to believe what she was hearing. "What do you mean?" she demanded, her voice shaking with a mixture of frustration and confusion. Evelyn's hands trembled as she clasped them together in her lap. She took a deep breath, and for a long moment, Emma wondered if she was going to say anything more, if she was going to tell Emma what had been kept hidden for so long. Then Evelyn spoke. "There's a bloodline in the Carter family, a family that traces back generations. A bloodline that I know Liam never shared with you. A bloodline that runs through Caleb's veins and through yours now too. Caleb isn't just Liam's son. He's part of something that was hidden because of the shame it would have brought on the family. A part of the family no one ever talked about, and something we wanted to keep buried." Emma's heart pounded in her chest. "You're telling me my children, my son, is part of your family's secret? What kind of secret are you talking about?" Evelyn hesitated, her face drawn and filled with sorrow. "Caleb's biological father was my brother." She let the words sink in, her eyes fixed on Emma as if waiting for the storm that was bound to follow. Emma's mind went blank. Her head was spinning. "Your brother? But that would mean Caleb isn't Liam's son?" she stammered. Evelyn nodded, her expression heavy with regret. "Caleb's father was my brother, Samuel. He and Liam's mother had an affair many years ago. It was a scandal at the time, one that threatened to destroy everything the Carter family had built. But the affair resulted in Caleb, and because of the shame it would have caused, we, my family, decided to cover it up." Emma's eyes widened as she tried to process what Evelyn had just said. Her mind refused to accept the implications, but there they were, laid bare in front of her. "Why didn't Liam ever tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me this? Why keep it a secret for all these years?" Emma's voice was filled with disbelief and anger, the injustice of it all threatening to overwhelm her. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Emma. "I didn't want to tell you because of the pain it would cause. And Liam, he was too ashamed of the family's past. He didn't want you to know the truth. But now, after everything, I can't keep this secret any longer. You deserve to know who Caleb truly is. You deserve to know the truth." Emma sat back in her chair, her mind reeling from the revelation. She felt betrayed again, not just by Liam, but by the entire Carter family. All these years, they had kept something this significant hidden from her and her children. The weight of the deception was too much to bear, and Emma didn't know how to begin processing it all. "Why now, Evelyn?" she asked, her voice shaky but firm. "Why come to me with this now? What do you expect me to do with this information?" Evelyn's eyes darkened with guilt. "I came because I think it's time for Caleb to know the truth, and I think it's time for you to have answers. There are things that you deserve to understand, things about the Carter family that have been buried for too long. And Caleb, he has a right to know where he comes from, to know the truth about his bloodline." Emma swallowed hard. The gravity of Evelyn's words weighed heavily on her, and she suddenly realized that this secret could shatter everything she had worked so hard to build with her children. The truth about Caleb's heritage could change everything. She wasn't sure if she was ready for it, but one thing was clear. She couldn't ignore it. "I'll think about what you've told me," Emma said, her voice tight. "But right now, I need time. I need time to process all of this." Evelyn nodded, her expression filled with understanding and sorrow. "I know, And I'm sorry for the pain this will cause you, but you deserve to know, and Caleb deserves to know the truth. Emma stood up, her heart heavy with the weight of the secret she had just learned. The world around her seemed to tilt, as if the very foundation she had built for her children was beginning to crack. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She would protect Caleb and the triplets at all costs, even if the truth threatened to tear them apart. As Evelyn left, Emma stood by the door, her mind swirling with questions that had no easy answers. The truth had come to light, but what would she do with it now? The days following Evelyn's revelation felt like a heavy fog settling over Emma's life. She hadn't told anyone about the conversation she'd had with Liam's mother. The weight of the truth was too much to bear, and she wasn't sure how to begin processing everything. There was anger, there was confusion, and above all, there was a profound sense of betrayal that gnawed at her heart. Liam had always kept his distance, emotionally and physically, and now she learned that his family, his entire lineage, had kept secrets from her, secrets about her children. Caleb, the boy she loved so dearly, was bound to a history she hadn't known existed, and she was left reeling from the revelation that he might never truly belong to the family she had tried to build for him. Yet, despite the anger and the confusion, something inside Emma stirred. For the first time in years, she had an opportunity to reclaim the narrative, to rebuild the foundation that had been broken. But the question remained, could she find peace with the truth? Or would it destroy everything she had worked so hard for? As the days passed, Emma couldn't shake the thought of Caleb and the others growing up without knowing the full truth. They deserved to know about their heritage, their roots, and the complexities that ran through their veins. It was something she could no longer protect them from, no matter how painful it might be. They were old enough now to understand. And then, unexpectedly, Evelyn reached out to Emma again. This time, her tone was different, more sincere. She had heard about the struggles Emma had faced since the birth of the triplets, the hardship of being a single mother, the way Emma had carved out a new life from nothing. Evelyn had seen it all from a distance and had never intervened. But now, she wanted to make things right. "I want to help," Evelyn had said, her voice soft but earnest. "I know it won't fix everything, but I can be there for you and the children. I want to make up for the years I stayed silent." At first, Emma hesitated. How could she trust someone who had been a bystander for so long? But then she thought of the children, how they were growing so quickly, how they were beginning to ask more questions about their father, about Liam, about the family they'd never known. It was a hard pill to swallow, but she couldn't do this alone anymore. When Evelyn arrived at her apartment the next day, Emma had prepared herself for the emotional weight of the conversation. She hadn't decided whether or not she was ready to let the older woman back into her life, but she knew something had to change. Evelyn brought with her a small suitcase and a bag of groceries, a humble attempt to offer something practical to show her willingness to help. She smiled faintly when Emma answered the door, her eyes reflecting a mixture of regret and hope. "I've brought some food for the children," Evelyn said as she stepped inside, but Emma could see the hesitation in her movements. It wasn't just groceries she was offering something deeper, her own redemption. The two women sat down at the kitchen table, and after a long silence, Evelyn spoke. "Emma, I know I've failed you in many ways. I failed my son, and I failed you. But I want to change that. I want to be part of your lives. I want to know my grandchildren." Emma studied her for a moment. She had seen the broken woman who had kept so many secrets in the past, but now Evelyn seemed different, as though the weight of all those years had finally caught up with her. "You think it's that easy?" Emma's voice was thick with emotion, but she held herself together. "You think that after all this time, I can just let you into our lives like nothing ever happened?" Evelyn winced at the accusation, but there was no defensiveness in her expression. She nodded slowly. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to forget everything that has happened. But I do hope you'll give me a chance to make things right, even if only for the sake of the children." Emma's heart softened, and she looked down at the table, unable to meet Evelyn's gaze. There was so much that needed to be said, but she wasn't ready. Not yet. The past was still too fresh, and the pain from everything that had been kept from her still stung. "I don't know if I can," Emma said, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can trust you. You knew about Caleb and didn't tell me. You let Liam keep me in the dark about all of this, and now you expect me to just forgive it?" Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted to hurt you, Emma. I never wanted to keep secrets from you, but I was afraid. I didn't know how to fix it. And when you and Liam broke apart, I just stayed silent, thinking that would be easier." Emma closed her eyes, the exhaustion of the past few years catching up with her. She had tried so hard to be strong, to build something for her children, and every time she thought she could trust someone, they let her down. She felt betrayed by Liam, by his family, by everyone who had abandoned her. But as the silence stretched between them, Emma's resolve wavered. She had always prided herself on being independent, on doing everything for her children. But was she really doing this alone? Could she keep shutting people out, or was there room for reconciliation, for healing? "I don't know what to say, Evelyn," Emma whispered. "I don't know if I can just welcome you back into our lives like this, but I'll try. For the kids. I'll try." Evelyn nodded, tears streaming down her face as she reached out, placing her hand gently on Emma's. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance." It was the beginning of something new, but it was not without its challenges. Emma had opened a door she had kept locked for so long, and while it felt vulnerable, it also felt like the first step toward healing, toward letting go of the past, no matter how painful, and building a future that could hold both the love and the grief. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn began visiting more regularly. She helped Emma with the children, offering to babysit while Emma worked, taking them on little outings, and even teaching them about their Carter heritage. Slowly, she was building a relationship with Maya, Caleb, and Noah. One that was not without its awkward moments, but was filled with genuine affection. But Emma could see how deeply the truth about Caleb's lineage was affecting him. At night, when the house was quiet and the children were asleep, she would sit by his bedside, brushing his hair back as he lay in bed, staring up at her with wide, confused eyes. "Mom," Caleb asked one night, his voice small, "why didn't Daddy ever want to see us?" It was a question Emma wasn't ready to answer, but the truth had to come out, sooner or later. As painful as it was, she couldn't keep hiding the truth from him. "I don't know, baby," she said softly, "but I'm here, and I'll always be here for you." As Emma held him close, she couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Would they ever be able to fully forgive the mistakes of the past? Would Liam ever truly make amends? Only time would tell. But for now, Emma was determined to protect her children, to give them the love they deserved, and to build the life they had all dreamed of. Even if the road was uncertain, one thing was clear. She would fight for them, no matter what. Liam sat in his study, staring out of the window at the sprawling, manicured lawn of his Ashton Heights mansion. The evening sky was painted in hues of orange and purple, but the beauty of the scene did little to soothe the storm inside him. His thoughts were consumed by guilt, by regret, and by a longing that gnawed at his soul. The choices he had made, the family he had abandoned, the children he had turned his back on, he could no longer escape the consequences of his actions. The life he had so carefully built had begun to unravel, thread by thread. His second marriage to Vanessa, which had seemed so promising at the beginning, was now hanging by a fragile thread. She had become more demanding, more controlling, and less understanding with each passing day. His career, once thriving and full of opportunity, had stalled. The deals he had counted on had fallen through, and he found himself fighting harder than ever just to maintain his position in the world he had once dominated. But it wasn't his career or his marriage that consumed him most. It was Emma. It was Caleb, Maya, and Noah, the triplets who were his children, and yet he had never allowed himself to see them as such. He had made a choice all those years ago to turn his back on them, to ignore the truth that lay in front of him. And now that choice was haunting him. Liam closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The image of Emma's face, full of hurt and disbelief, haunted him. The way she had stood before him at their last meeting, cold and distant, her eyes filled with anger. He knew he had shattered her trust. He had taken away her family, her dream, and he had done it without a second thought. What kind of man did that? A part of him wanted to pretend it hadn't happened, that he hadn't made the worst mistake of his life. But another part of him, the part he couldn't ignore, knew that there was no escaping the truth. He had to make amends. He had to find a way to reconnect with his children, to show them that despite everything, he was capable of being the father they deserved. But how could he? How could he rebuild the bridges he had so carelessly burned? He had thought about this for weeks. And with each passing day, the answer became clearer. He had to start small. He couldn't expect Emma to forgive him overnight, or for the children to accept him as if nothing had happened. He had to earn their trust, prove that he was truly sorry for the hurt he had caused. But even that didn't seem like enough. He needed to do more than apologize. He needed to show them, through his actions, that he was a changed man. Liam stood up from his desk and walked over to the bookshelf, pulling down an old photo album. It was filled with pictures of his family, of happier times before everything had fallen apart. As he flipped through the pages, he found a picture of Emma and the triplets, taken on the day they were born. The joy on her face was evident, and the little bundles of joy in her arms were perfect, just like they were meant to be. His heart ached as he traced his finger over the image. He had been so blind, so focused on his own pain, his own pride, that he had let them slip away. But it wasn't too late. Not yet. The next morning, Liam made a decision. He would start by reaching out to Emma. It wasn't going to be easy, and he knew it. But he couldn't keep hiding behind his guilt and shame. He had to confront it head on. He sent her a message, short and simple, but it carried more weight than he could ever express in words. Emma, I know I can never undo what I've done, but I want to make things right. I'm sorry for everything. I want to be there for the children. If you'll let me, I'll prove that I can be the father they need. Liam stared at the screen for a long time before hitting send. His fingers hovered above the keyboard, as though waiting for some divine sign to tell him he was making the right choice. But there was no sign, no instant revelation. There was only the uncertainty of his actions, the fear of rejection, and the hope that somehow Emma would give him a chance. He waited, pacing the length of his study, his heart pounding in his chest. What if she didn't respond? What if she had already made up her mind? The thought of never seeing his children again, of never being part of their lives, was unbearable. But he knew he couldn't change the past. All he could do was show up, try his best, and let the chips fall where they may. To his surprise, Emma replied within the hour. Her message was brief, but it was enough to give him hope. I'm not sure if I'm ready to talk, Liam, but I'll think about it. For the kids. That was all he needed. It was a small crack in the door, a glimpse of possibility that made his heart soar. He had a chance, one chance, to make things right. Over the next few days, Liam made an effort to be present in the lives of the triplets, even if from a distance. He asked Emma if he could come by and pick them up for an afternoon at the park, just to spend time with them. No expectations, no strings attached. Emma agreed reluctantly, but she could see the sincerity in his eyes. For the first time, he wasn't just showing up because it was convenient. He was showing up because he wanted to be there. When he arrived at the apartment, Emma greeted him with a neutral expression, but the tension between them was palpable. The triplets, however, didn't seem to notice. They were thrilled to see their father, even though they hadn't seen him in so long. Caleb was the first to run up to him, wrapping his arms around Liam's legs. "Daddy? Are we going to the park?" Caleb asked, his face lighting up with excitement. Liam kneeled down, meeting his son's gaze. The word daddy sent a wave of emotion crashing over him. It was a reminder of everything he had missed, of everything he had almost lost. He smiled, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Yeah, buddy, we're going to the park." Maya and Noah ran over to join in the excitement, and for a moment, everything felt normal. But as they all piled into the car, Liam could feel the weight of Emma's gaze on him from the rearview mirror. She was watching him closely, studying his every move. She was waiting for him to slip, to show that he wasn't truly capable of change. And deep down, he knew she was right to be cautious. At the park, Liam tried to make the most of his time with the children. He pushed them on the swings, played catch, and listened to their stories about school, their friends, and the little things that made them smile. They were happy, carefree children, children who didn't know the full weight of their father's past mistakes. And Liam was determined to keep it that way, at least for now. As the afternoon wore on, Emma watched them from a bench nearby, her arms crossed, her eyes softening as she observed the way the children responded to Liam. She saw the genuine effort in his actions. He wasn't perfect, he would never be, but for the first time in a long time, he was trying. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. When it was time to leave, Liam hugged each of the triplets tightly, his heart full of emotions he couldn't quite articulate. As they got in the car to head back, Caleb looked up at him and asked the question Liam had been dreading. "Daddy, can we see you more often?" Liam froze for a moment, the question piercing through the walls he had built around himself. He turned to Emma, searching for her reaction. She met his gaze, and for a fleeting moment, their eyes locked, sharing an unspoken understanding. Liam nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Caleb. I promise you'll see me more." As the car drove away, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. But he had taken the first step, and for the first time in a long time, he believed that redemption was possible. Emma stood by the window of her small apartment, gazing out at the quiet street below. The world outside seemed so still, so distant from the whirlwind of emotions that had taken over her life in recent years. She had come a long way since that day in Crestwood Hospital, when her world had come crashing down. She had rebuilt herself from the ground up, built a new life for her children, and found strength she hadn't known she possessed. But the past, as much as she had tried to bury it, still lingered. And now, with Liam back in their lives, she wasn't sure if she was ready to let go of the walls she had built. The triplets were in the other room, their laughter filling the space that had once felt so empty. They had grown so much in the years since Liam had left, and yet they still remembered him. Caleb's question earlier, asking if they could see him more often, had been a reminder of the innocent love they had for their father. It made Emma's heart ache. It wasn't that she wanted to keep Liam from them, it was that she wasn't sure if she could ever trust him again. The doorbell rang, pulling her from her thoughts. She walked over and opened it, finding Evelyn standing on the doorstep, her expression softer than usual. "Hello, Emma," Evelyn said, her voice tentative but warm. "I hope I'm not intruding." Emma stood aside, allowing Evelyn to enter. She had always been the one who had stayed silent about the past, holding on to family secrets like a sacred burden. It had taken years for Evelyn to finally open up, and now, as much as Emma didn't want to admit it, she found herself seeking the comfort of the older woman's wisdom. "Of course, Evelyn," Emma said, her tone neutral but polite. "What brings you here today?" Evelyn hesitated for a moment, as though unsure of what to say, then took a deep breath and spoke. "I came to talk about Liam, about what's been happening between all of us." Emma's heart twinged. She had spent so long keeping her distance from Liam that the idea of discussing him with anyone felt like opening an old wound. But Evelyn was family, and if there was anyone who might offer insight, it was her. "I know this is difficult," Evelyn continued, her voice soft but steady. "I'm not here to pressure you or to tell you what you should do, but I wanted to say that Liam has been trying. I see the regret in his eyes when he talks about you and the children. He wants to make things right. And, Emma, I think he truly means it." Emma felt a rush of emotion at Evelyn's words, but she swallowed it down. "But can he? Can he really make it right? How do I know he's not going to hurt us again?" Evelyn stepped closer, her eyes filled with compassion. "I can't speak for Liam, and I understand your pain, but you've always been strong, Emma. You've raised those children on your own with love and dedication, and I see that in them. I see it in how they've grown, how they look at you. They love you, Emma, but they also love their father. They deserve to have a relationship with him, if that's what they want. And you deserve peace." Emma took a deep breath, the weight of Evelyn's words settling heavily on her heart. The idea of giving Liam another chance, of letting him into their lives again, was terrifying. But as she thought about the triplets, about their laughter, and the way they spoke of their father, she knew deep down that Evelyn was right. It wasn't about her, not anymore. It was about the children. It was about their happiness and their future. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to let go of the past. The sound of the triplets' footsteps interrupted her thoughts. Caleb appeared in the doorway, his eyes wide with excitement. "Mom, Grandma Evelyn, look, we made a drawing for you." He held up a crayon-colored picture of a family, a mother, a father, and 3 children, smiling together in a sunlit meadow. It was simple, but to Emma, it was everything. It was a picture of what could be, of the life they could have, if she allowed it. Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she took the picture from Caleb's hands. She hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of his little body against hers. "It's beautiful, Caleb. Thank you." Evelyn watched the interaction with a gentle smile, her eyes filled with understanding. "I think they're ready, Emma. They're ready for Liam, and maybe you are too." Emma didn't respond immediately. She wasn't sure if she was ready to forgive, or if she was ever going to feel that same love for Liam that she once had. But she knew one thing. Her children needed him. They needed a father, and even though he wasn't perfect, he was theirs. Later that evening, when the children were tucked into bed, Emma sat by the window once more, her thoughts swirling. She knew she couldn't keep living in fear of the past. She had rebuilt her life, but there was still a part of her that had been left in pieces. Perhaps it was time to let go of those pieces, to rebuild with new ones. For the triplets, for herself. She took out her phone, her fingers trembling as she typed a message to Liam. "Liam, I don't know what the future holds, but if you want to be part of our lives, you need to prove it. I'm not ready to forgive everything, but for the children, I'm willing to try. We'll start slow, for them." Her heart raced as she hit send. She didn't know if this would lead to a happy ending, but she knew that taking this step was the right thing to do. She couldn't protect the children from everything, but she could give them the opportunity to have a family. A real family. Liam received the message late that night, and for a long moment, he simply stared at the words on the screen. His heart swelled with hope, and yet a knot of fear tightened in his chest. He had been given another chance, maybe the only chance he would ever get. He sat down on the edge of his bed, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. For years, he had been running from the consequences of his actions, too proud to admit his mistakes. But now, the path forward seemed clear. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about the children, about Emma, about rebuilding what he had broken. He replied simply, "Thank you, Emma. I won't let you down." And with that, he knew that, together, they would move forward. Slowly, but surely. The past might never fully heal, but perhaps, just perhaps, they could create a new future, one built on the foundation of forgiveness, love, and the strength of family. As Emma lay down that night, she felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. The future was uncertain, and the road ahead was still filled with challenges. But for the first time in years, she felt ready to face it. She had built a life full of love for her children, and now they would learn to embrace the possibility of something even greater. The story of Emma and her children is not just a journey of forgiveness, but a testament to the boundless power of love and perseverance. No matter how painful the past may be, love and devotion to family are the forces that help people overcome any challenge. Emma was not just a great mother. She became a symbol of resilience and courage, choosing to rise from the ruins to protect her children. Liam, despite his unerasable mistakes, eventually realized that happiness doesn't come from perfection, but from the effort to correct what's been broken. Though both of them still carried scars, they learned how to move forward together with love and understanding for the sake of their children. In the end, it was forgiveness and unconditional love that helped them rebuild the bridges they thought were forever lost. They learned to rebuild their family, not from flawless pieces, but from cracks and acceptance. Moving into the future, though unsure of what it held, Emma and Liam, along with the triplets, learned that family isn't always perfect, but it can be complete with love and unwavering effort. Together, they would continue, building a life from the best things they had, believing that, no matter what, love would always be their strongest foundation. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story until the very end. Your support means the world to me. I hope you found something meaningful in Emma's journey, and that it touched your heart as much as it did mine. If you enjoyed the story, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on future content. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions really help me continue creating stories like this. And I truly appreciate every one of you. Don't forget to share this story with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Thanks again for being a part of this journey. Your support is everything. See you in the next video.